Hi guys, Rob here. Let's have a chat about whether the vegan's claims that eating a plant-based diet is more humane than eating meat is true. Thanks for joining me. There's no commercial food production system that doesn't impact on animals. None. Okay? So what that means is whatever you're doing, if you're producing food in commercial quantities, you're impacting an animal. So any claim that a specific diet doesn't have an impact on animals is simply false. Straight up false. So as a food producer, I can tell you there's a huge difference between how many animals are killed when you grow a crop or when you produce meat. And it's not the way you think it is. So when I grow a crop, what I have to do is turn a complex ecosystem such as this into a monoculture. And what that means is I have to strip away all the food that the small animals, large animals, all the animals around are relying on, strip that feed away and have nothing left. So I'm going to use 90%, 99% of the available resources of that paddock and turn it into a monoculture. Now, any of the animals that aren't killed in the process of preparing the field, being smashed up by the heavy machinery, are going to starve because their food source has been removed. The insects that relied on the food that was there, the complex ecosystem, are going to disappear. They're going to be starved out, and all the small animals that relied on those insects are going to die, and then all the larger predator animals are going to also, well, they're just going to starve. Their food source has been removed. As simple as that. So that's the stage one of when you're growing a crop. That's what you have to do. So once the crop is sown, there's this burst of food that comes on tap. So the small animals will breed up. The ones that were left over, the small 1%ers that managed to hang on around the edge of the crop, they come back and they breed up quite rapidly. Now you have to control them, so that involves baiting, which is non-target specific, and it's not a very nice way for them to go. And those that survive and don't get killed by the header when it's being harvested, they starve out once the food source is stripped away again, back to zero food on the ground. A few years ago there was a mouse plague, 5 to 10 billion mice, that's the estimate. That's how many mice are on the ground, and then once their food source is removed, they start to consume themselves. Plant-based diets are responsible for that, directly responsible for that. They just don't include it in their calculation. Oh no, look, my plant-based diet doesn't impact on any animals. Rubbish, it impacted on billions of animals. So if jumping in with me were to make a machine to make burgers, what we're going to do, we'll round up all the small animals from around here, all the lizards, all the birds, a few insects. You're going to help? So we'll round them up and we'll pour them into our new machine that we just made, and with Jumpy having not done any of the welding. We'll pour in the small animals, turn the handle. Will you help turn the handle? We'll turn the handle. And over the next course of 30 days, these small animals are going to be killed. Some will be crushed up instantly by the machines. Some will be maimed and bleed out with missing limbs for a day or so. Others will pour a little bit of poison in there, and they'll be poisoned over the next 3 days. They'll die a slow death, and others will starve. So over the course of the next 30 days, they'll all be dead, nothing left. And then push a button, our burger will appear. Jumpy likes burgers. Our burger will appear, and we'll call it the Beyond Impossible Burger. Sorry, just a sec, I'll take this. Hello? What do you mean they won't accept it? There'll be protests at the gate because it's inhumane. But it's the same way that they're killing the same way these tofu munching. What the hell? And I can't use that name because it's already been used. Okay. So my machine would be inhumane, and no one would in their right mind make a machine like that. But it's exactly the same way that your tofu burger, your Impossible Burger, your Beyond Burger is being made, and then claiming that it's got no animal impact. Bullshit. It's got billions of animals being impacted. You're just not including it in the calculation because you want to pretend in a holier-than-thou attitude that you're eating your Impossible Burger is doing a better job than the guy eating his steak. Simply false. So what should you eat if you want to minimise your impact on animals? So say somewhere in the outback in Australia, you'll find a place there's plenty of vegetation growing, it's not being utilised because there's no water points. You put an artificial water point in, and then you introduce a large animal like a cow because you get more bang for your bulk going with a large beast. You're going to get 350 kilos worth of meat. That's going to feed 1,300 meals. So you get a lot of meals from one animal, you know, and it's killed in a humane way. So animals from somewhere like Central Australia that have been grass-fed, minimum animal impact when you eat that. That's the best thing you can eat if you want to have minimum animal impact, and that's the best you can hope for. There's no such thing as zero animal impact in a commercial production system. So eating a cow from the outback that's grass-fed. The next one is a place like this, and you can see where we're standing, where we've still got a complex ecosystem going, but we're only utilising around about 30% of the pasture, and the complex ecosystem is being maintained. And if you include the trees in that around here, we're probably only utilising 10% of the available resources, as opposed to cropping where you're going to use 99% of the available resources. We're maintaining a complex ecosystem, all the small animals are still available, they're not being killed and starved out. The other thing about a complex ecosystem like this is we get the beekeepers come in and keep their bees here. We don't charge them for it. They're not taking any resource that we would be using, because we've got running a complex ecosystem. Our sheep don't eat anything that the bees use. And bees are vitally important. If you want to continue to eat, you've got to have these bees. So why do they come here? We run a complex ecosystem. We spot spray, so we use very few chemicals. Our sheep are treated for internal parasites. There's very few chemicals and there's nothing that will affect the bees. So they've got plenty of food and there's no chemicals being used. As opposed to cropping, monoculture, lots of chemicals being used. So the beekeepers can't go there for food. There's a small burst where they could, as long as no one's using too many nasty chemicals, which you just wouldn't rely on. So the beekeepers come here when there's no other food source. And then they take these bees and they go and fertilise the fruit trees. The beekeepers need somewhere to go where their bees are safe and they have got a food source. So if you like bees, if you like eating, if you don't want to starve to death, these kind of properties are vitally important. When I grow a cereal crop, barley is what I try and grow, and I haven't done it for a few years because I'm not very good at it. But when I grow a barley crop, what I'm aiming for is the highest level. So I want barley for human consumption. It's got to have the right amount of protein and the right amount of sugar. When it's getting harvested, it gets tested. If it goes malt, it gets sold straight away to get turned into beer. So if the quality's right, that's where it's going, and that's my target. That's what I want. When it falls short, it gets turned into stock feed. Now this is an important point. The croppers have to have a place to send their seconds. They're growing a lot of crop because not all of it reaches the high enough standard for human consumption. And when it falls short, they have to have somewhere to send their product. Otherwise you've killed all these animals, you spent all this money, you've used all this chemical, you burn all this diesel, and you need to have somewhere to send this product. Where's it go? It goes into meat production, goes into making your eggs, goes into making your pork. That's where the leftovers go. If my grain goes malt, I've even got a dance prepared for it. There's a symbiotic relationship between the croppers and the meat producers. The croppers are growing the food to reach a certain specification. They fall short, that product ends up being turned into protein. It also provides a buffer there. If you were just trying to grow enough enough grain for the population and you have a bad year, yeah, you can still turn it into meat product, and that stretches out and provides a buffer in the food supply system. Whereas if it wasn't there, if you're just trying to grow enough food for human consumption, didn't reach specification, what do you do with the leftovers? You've killed all these animals, it's a tiny percentage more, and you've got a product that people want, like eggs and pork and beef and sheep. That market there, what are you going to do with the grain if you don't do it with that? You just waste it. You just pour it out on the ground and let it rot. There's got to be a market for the seconds, and that's what the meat industry, the feedlotters, and the chicken farmers, that's the market they're providing. They're doing something useful with a product that would otherwise be wasted. And you can't just go, we're going to grow enough food just so that we're going to have enough we're going to all go vegan, we're going to grow enough grains. Man, it puts you in a vulnerable spot. You have a couple of bad years, you're going to be very, very hungry very quickly. And you're going to have to pay a bucket load more for your grain. There's such a huge disconnect between us food producers and the people in the city now. You know, my grandparents knew what it was like to go hungry. Their kids knew directly from their parents what the stories about not having enough food on the table. You know, the disconnect between me and my grandparents is there, but I still can hear their stories. But now we've gone into the next generation, and there's such a disconnect, such a void between contact with people who went hungry and understood how their food production system worked, and now. There's only 1% of us who grow the food. So every meal, there's 99 people standing on my shoulders. There's 99 people standing on my mate's shoulders, my next door neighbour's shoulders. Every meal. And most people in the cities have no connection to someone on the land. They don't know people who grow their food. It's just that there's only a very small number of us that do it. And there's only a very small number of us that now understand the complexity and what's involved. The trouble with only a very small number of us being involved is allowed a vocal minority in the cities to attack their food production. If you go into a supermarket in Australia, there's only one continent missing, and that's Antarctica. Every other continent you can have food from. It's extraordinary, a choice of food that is available to you now. And rather than be grateful, there's a small minority that are attacking the producers and waving their placards and claiming a holier than thou attitude that is simply completely unwarranted. They are so full of shit. And attacking the people that are feeding you. I mean, is that not insane? And then claiming it from a position that is invalid anyway. Crazy. It's completely fucking insane. So the most stupid thing I've seen is vegetarians protesting outside of a steakhouse. Like, fuck me. They're going and munch on their bowl of tofu that's killed heaps of animals, not in a humane way. Way more animals have been killed. And yet they're protesting outside of a steakhouse claiming that it's inhumane to eat the steak. Fuck me, it's completely wrong and false. Pull your heads in. Thanks YouTube, thanks for watching. Bo and Jumpy here are no help at all really. Please share this, because the more people that understand where the food production comes from and what's involved and how many animals are actually killed and what's humane, what's not humane, the better. The disconnect, we need some more education on food production systems into the cities.